My name's Adele Onyango, and welcome to another episode of Legally Clueless. No, seriously, I have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. Hey you, welcome to episode 231 of Legally Clueless. Thank you so much for rocking with this podcast if you're an OG member. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, welcome to the family. Audio episodes like this go out every single Monday, and you can stream us on Spotify or everywhere else you find podcasts on. I'm about to sneeze. Is it coming? Is it? No. Okay, it's passing. Anyway, I'm super excited about this episode. One, because of the story that's coming up. We're going to get to it in a jiffy. But two, because of our upcoming Legally Clueless live event. That's going to be on the 26th of August. We've already sold 50% of the tickets. So I just want to say thank you so much for grabbing your tickets already. It's so affirming and so validating. It makes me know that we're on the right track. We're on the right track with this space that we've made. And if you're wondering what's going to be happening at Legally Clueless Live, first, you and I are going to hang out. We're going to meet. We're going to chit-chat. We're also going to have three amazing storytellers who've been on the podcast before get live on stage with me for conversation on the next chapter of their story. So we're going to learn about self-love and how that played into the relationship she got into, and she being Kadzo. I think you listened to her story in episode 30. There have been so many beautiful developments for her, so much growth, so much healing. I think anybody who is in or would love to get into intimate relationships and wants to understand the role healing yourself plays in that will enjoy that conversation. There's also Washira, whose story was on leaving a toxic relationship and an ADHD diagnosis. I feel like he has wonderful insights into what a more masculine journey in that sense looks like, you know, and at the end of his story when he was on the podcast, he just gotten into a new relationship. So I really want to hear how that's going as well. And then there's Rosalind. I've really been thinking about Rosalind this week because I love that she represents an older African woman who has the most amazing thoughts on relationships, marriage, from a feminine lens, you know? And the reason that I love this story, and I just absolutely feel so drawn to Rosalind, is one of my favorite series is Grace and Frankie. And oh my goodness, I think I've rewatched it twice. And I loved it because of many things, but one of it sparked the thought in me of what does love, intimacy, and even sex look like when we're older as women, you know? Because the more I age, I'm 34 right now, the more I age, the more comfortable I am in myself, the easier it is for me not to settle, the easier it is for me to evolve, the easier it is for me to keep aspiring to live a big life. And one of the things Rosalind said in her story is that a woman shouldn't have just one partner in her life. And I really think about these things because as I grow and all of these things I've mentioned are happening, I wonder what are the odds that I will have one partner throughout my life, right? Who will be able to evolve as fast as I'm evolving. What level of self-awareness is needed for that to happen? And what happens if we evolve past each other? You know what I mean? And I just really want to tap into that and so much more in her story. I mean, her story was so wonderful. Just in case you forgot about it, listen to this.
How I met my first husband. Let's start there. I was working at the government printers as a designer. He did ask me to marry him. And so dowry was paid. And you know the way now you're married, you're supposed to live with your husband and go to your home. I didn't. I stayed with my mother, I think, for weeks. So we got an apartment and then we moved. The first week, I knew I was not going to be there. I knew it in my soul, in my spirit. I knew it was a mistake on the first day. I think we lost the connection the moment we called it marriage. Maybe love should not change its name. The way he began to treat me, the demand for a child began. So when those things started getting introduced, sex is for procreation. A woman is supposed to serve her husband. A woman is supposed to be home a certain hour. And then, of course, now he began also to put boundaries between me and my family, me and my friends.
Yeah, so Rosen is going to be sharing a lot of things: 2 marriages, a dowry return ceremony, and where she is now in terms of losing a spouse, getting back into the dating world, and how her experience in that has been. And she's a really fun person, so I'm pretty sure we'll have a heck of a time. So make sure you come through 26th of August at 1 p.m. It's at Baraza Media Lab here in Nairobi, Kenya. And tickets are 1,000 bob. You can grab your tickets now on Hustle Sasa or legallycluelessafrica.com. I've put a link in the show notes for you to get your tickets. They are going really fast. As we inch closer, we only have 50% of the tickets left. So if I were you, I would grab my tickets ASAP. All right, let's get back to this particular story. One of my favorite people is sharing part 1 of their story, which is why I was super excited about this episode. His name is Ian, and his story is so wonderful. It's on self-awareness, self-actualization, and becoming a monk. Listen to this.
But I guess maybe there's this definition of masculinity that to some degree is very toxic. And it's like men aren't allowed to be vulnerable. They're not allowed to have emotions, whereas, you know, like they're the biggest emotional people. And then it just manifests in this external show of masculinity. And a person who can really can see that masked beneath this is this emotion and this, you know, boy child crying out for some affection and love. I remember in school, because of my engagement with like all the sort of feminine activities, as they would have classified it, I got bullied a lot. And then once I got into this world of fame, the same guys who were bullying me now want to be my friend. So I realized, there's some fakeness here. I never grew up with my father. My biological father never really had a connection with me from my youth. But then all of a sudden, the guys showed up and he's like, oh, my son, I miss you. All these things. And that also made me think, wow, so now I'm just supposed to jump onto you when my mom has been the one doing all the work.
That is Ian's story. It's coming up a little later in this episode, and I'm pretty sure you're going to enjoy it because it's going to expand your mind for sure. Part 1 and part 2 of his story, definitely going to expand your mind. We're going to get to it in a bit. Right now, Song of the Week. It just hit me. I'm not too sure I gave you a Song of the Week last week. I'm not sure, man. I feel like I've been getting lost in this Legally Clueless live event and just the excitement. So some things I'm like, did I not? Even though I had one written, but I'm going to share it with you. It's one of my favorite songs by Janelle Monáe. It's one of those songs you never hear, like, ever. And if anybody tells me they know this song and they like it, that's how I know you're not just like a surface level fan of her music. Like you're a step deeper. And it's called Dance or Die. It features Saul Williams. I love it so much. I like to think of it like a freak's anthem. Freak here being something wonderful. I love being the weird one or the outsider because it means there's an element of being my true self in it, you know? There's an element of courage. And I feel like this song speaks to, maybe it's, well, my poetic interpretation of it is, it speaks to you either dance, i.e. live your truth and be your true self, or you die. Dance or die. And when you listen to the lyrics, it's so wonderful. And I always go back to that song, especially in those moments where you feel like either your dreams are too out there or your ambitions are too out there. And by out there, I mean like so not aligned with society's norms, you know? Maybe you're standing out in one way, shape, or form. Inside, it feels so natural for you to do this and so normal. But the reaction from outside is that it's weird, it's strange, you should stop it. This is one of those songs to cheer you on, to be like, even if people don't get it, I get it, and that's all that matters. I also hope that you've had a great week, you know? I think this week has been pretty awesome. I can't complain. I think the only thing I'm struggling with is waking up on time. But I think that's a more, what do I call it, weather situation. Because where I've moved to is like super cold during this season, July to probably the end of August. So what I've done is just added 1 more hour to my work day because I'm waking up an hour later. My body's just like, you want me to step out in this cold? No thanks. Even today, I was like, I'm going to wake up at 7 because that's when my first alarm goes off. I'm going to wake up at 7. I'm going to take a walk to we have this dam stroke river close by. I'm like, I'm going to take a walk there, take in that fresh air. And I opened my eyes. I saw how foggy it was. I was just like, yeah, no. That ain't happening, sis. So, yeah, that's the other thing I'm currently battling with. But I'm being very graceful with myself because it is goals, dude. And either way, I added 1 more hour to my workday. So I'm able to balance everything out. But one thought I did want to share before we jump into 100 African stories is something I was thinking about, how important it is to be at peace with being misunderstood. This is even with people who are super close to you, because even the person closest to you doesn't have as much context about you as you. Does that make sense? So no shit, they're going to misunderstand you a couple of times, And I thought about this because of late, my thoughts on my mom, who's passed away, would revolve around, well, if she was here, she'd understand me, she'd understand my decisions, etc. And I kind of was spiraling into feeling bad for myself. And so I had to snap out of it. And I had to really think about what's the truth here and what's the story I'm telling myself, right? It's not the universe conspiring against me when I'm misunderstood. The probability of that happening is super high. And sometimes, many times, it is way out of my control. And then I thought about what can I really control in this situation where you're misunderstood? Probably only my reaction. So I can either choose to explain myself, and even that route, you can explain, and never be understood, or I can choose to just let it be. So in the process of really thinking about it, I realized I shouldn't take others' lack of understanding of me or people not being graceful with me personally. They just don't have the context that I have of me. And it is what it is. Even if they're an asshole and they do it, I'm not going to take it personally. But what can I do? Because I'm the one who has the greatest context of me. So then I can be my own greatest cheerleader. I can be my own greatest best friend. I can be soft with myself. I can be graceful. I can hold myself accountable. I know moments where I can do better. You know what I mean? Because I have the most context about me than the next person. That really brought me some kind of peace. It really brought me some kind of peace because as a recovering people pleaser, you can find yourself desperate for understanding, desperately over explaining your decisions and the things that you've done, desperately using that as a gateway to validation, acceptance, which is very dangerous if you think about it. But when you step back and you realize, actually, even the person closest to me doesn't have as much context about me as I do. It stops being a personal thing, and then you stop explaining yourself for validation to anyone other than yourself. I really hope that makes sense. I really hope it makes sense. If it doesn't, please just rewind and play it back slowly. Okay, so let's jump into 100 African stories. I split it into part 1, part 2, because I believe when you listen to it, there'll be many gems that Ian drops that maybe you need to sit with for some time. I felt that after recording the story, after editing it. And so, yeah, I wanted you to have a breather. So our storyteller is Ian. I met him when he came to do an internship at Radio Africa while I was working there at Kiss FM. But I'd known him from before, from the kids show Machachari. But I still remember being very struck by how self-aware he was even back then when he was doing his internship, and how he just had this intense knowledge of self that just oozed out. And I was really drawn to that. And so I'm so glad that he was able to come on here and share his story with you and I, because it's very inspiring. Trust me, very inspiring. 100 African stories on Legally Clueless. Stories from Africa.
My name is Ian Nene, or Ian Munene, and I am born and raised in Nairobi, Kenya. I'm actually a mix. I'm half Kenyan, half Congolese. My father is Congolese, and my mom is Kenyan from a tribe called the Mbere tribe, which is, I think, around Central Province, thereabout. You know, with the Merus and the Embus, we're kind of slotted in between there. But I was mostly raised in Kenya with full Kenyan influence. Didn't really have a deep connection with my father like that. So I had a really, I could say, very close-knit, tight family, mostly connected with loads of women. I was raised with so many women. They're literally like the symbol of perfection in our family line. My mom, my aunties, and my sister were just always with me 24/7. I learned almost everything that I knew from them. And it was quite fun. I got to explore so many things about myself in my youth, and they kind of motivated me to try find myself in a young age, you know, without having like this strict boundaries of what being a man should be like. And so I kind of got this flexibility of exploring different facets of my existence. You know, I got to do dramas and plays, I got to sing, I got to dance, and then kind of figured from a young age that I'm a performer, I'm a presenter, and I like the creative side of things and the creative expression. And so they really kind of pushed and motivated me towards that direction in my young age and kind of encouraged me to have that form of expression, which wasn't really popular around my environment at the time. So I remember like in school, we would have all these different dances. You do like a traditional Acholi dance or like Luya dance or Kamba dance. And most of the dances were done by the women. It was always mostly like a women-based performance. But in school, we were encouraged. Like, it doesn't matter, both of you, both the guys and the girls come and perform. So I was always into it because I just loved to dance. I was just that one guy. I mean, I've got Congolese blood, so there's just something with my waist that kind of just allowed it. And yeah, they normally tried to push the guys to come forward. But like most of the guys were into like sports. So they were always doing track or, basketball, football, you name it. But for me, that was just like, I did it to make friends. I never really did it because it was a passion of mine. And there was a bit of aversion because, oh, I'm that dancer kid. But like, all the other guys are playing football and on that other side of things. So it was like a polarization to some degree. And I always felt a little bit different just because I viewed myself more interested in the performance side of things and presentations rather than the definitions of masculinity with the sports and the running and the rugby, etc. Yeah, that's something that was quite limiting for me in my youth, where I just felt like I wasn't encouraged, and so a lot of the motivation had to come from me because I enjoyed it. And then at the end of the day, when we did the performances in schools, like I was bagging most of the awards, best dancer, best performer. Those are like my staples. I never got best math, best science, no. And my mom would be like, okay, I mean, this is great, but give me a best math at least once, But no, I was more on the other side of things and I enjoyed it. So there was a little bit of an aversion towards being engaged in such activities. And I also don't really understand why. But I guess maybe there's this definition of masculinity that's especially pervasive throughout Africa, which I'm noticing that to some degree is very toxic. And it's like men aren't allowed to be vulnerable. They're not allowed to have emotions, whereas, like they're the biggest emotional people. And then it just manifests in this external show of masculinity. And a person who can really can see that masked beneath this is this emotion and this, boy child crying out for some affection and love, And so I think that's one thing I can see that throughout Africa is kind of pervasive, and the men aren't allowed to really be emotional and be soft. It's like that's not a masculine trait, which I totally disagree with. So when I started taking acting seriously, I think I was at the age of 10, 11. I remember I reached out to my mom and I told mommy, I want to be an actor. And mom looked at me and she was like, Ian, I love you so much, but we are in Kenya. We're not in Hollywood. We're not in the UK. We're in Nairobi, in this kind of place. You have to be realistic. A white-collar job is your kind of thing. So if I'm going to be spending money on your education, I want you to be coming out in a secure white-collar job, in that kind of a career. I was like, yeah, okay, makes sense. I understand. It's a hustler culture in Nairobi. But I always knew that somehow or other I could take advantage of this opportunity. God can't just have given me this gift for me not to be able to utilize it and, use it for some good and some purpose. And so we had some back and forth with her. I mean, I was only 10 years of age, so I couldn't really rebuttal. It was just like, okay, mom. But then one time I remember we had a monologue that I was asked by one of my teachers to perform for our prize giving day. I practiced and I was on it. I was ready. And I invited my mom to come for it because I was actually receiving an award of the best performer. I performed this monologue, and my mom came almost towards the end. So she got a bit of the monologue. I remember it was the monologue of a boy child crying out for love. It was something along those lines. Can't remember it in detail, but something along those lines. And it was pretty good to some degree, got a standing ovation from the audience. And then after a couple of hours later, obviously the awards were passed on. And as we were exiting, me and my mom on the way home, someone stops us and is like, "Hi, are you Mama Ian?" And my mom was like, yes. "My name is so-and-so." I forget his name. I think his name was Steve. Can't remember his name. And he worked for a company, I think it was called Ken Africa. Not too sure. But it was like an online streaming Kenyan network that was streaming Kenyan shows for diaspora. And he was like, "We're starting this show. The show is called Tabasamu." I remember it so well. And they wanted to stream it outside. And he was like, "Would like to have your son on the show. We think he's got what it takes. And, he'll be paid and everything. It's going to be like a full-time job to some degree." And I remember my mom being shocked, like, "Oh my God, are you serious?" Because we were just talking about this. And I was like, no, there's no way. But then, yeah, that happened. And they got me on. And I only had, 11 episodes on the show. But amidst those 11 episodes, this other show that was being produced or that was being worked on, known as Machachari, which ended up becoming like this kids, fantastic sitcom, was being developed. And then they approached us and were like, "Oh no, we'd want you to be part of the main cast for this show." I was just doing those 11 episodes and it was like every other week, but then they kind of plunged me into every weekend. So I never even had like a childhood to some degree. I was just on it doing like these episodes every single Friday. I would travel, do the recordings and shootings till Sunday. We would house ourselves in one of the spaces which was acting as a set, in a place called Kahawa Sukari. I still remember it. And we would shoot there, and then I'd come back, go to school, Friday, back, like that. And then that kind of just, plummeted me into this world of the acting industry in Nairobi, where I got to connect with so many different people and, experience what it is to be, an actor in Kenya. I kind of made it work because I knew it was what my passion was at a very young age. In many ways, I felt like I had to mature very quickly. I didn't really get to spend a lot of time with kids, just being kids. With the cast, we were like learning scripts and learning how to be on set, learning how to work with a camera, being, professional. And then the times when I wasn't acting, I would, when I wasn't actually on set, I would be behind doing continuity. So I was like learning how to do all these things and kind of building my awareness so I could broaden my understanding of what it takes to make a production happen. So in many ways, it made me grow up, and I felt like I maybe missed on having your everyday childhood experience of, going out to play football and, playing games and having those casual fights. I mean, I had that from when I was like 5 years of age to like 10. But I think also that crucial age of becoming more mature and kind of evolving in your teens, I kind of missed that. But also, I don't think it was to my disadvantage. I think it made me just mature and understand the world in a much more bigger way. And it made me just think about real life decisions from such a young age, which I can say is what's helped me right now find myself and just be a better version of me. So it, double-edged sword. I remember in school, because of my engagement with like all the sort of feminine activities, as they would have classified it, I got bullied a lot. And then once I got into this world of fame, the same guys who were bullying me now want to be my friend. So I realized, there's some fakeness here. This isn't real. And it made me just have an understanding of what people present to you. You always have to take it with a pinch of salt unless they validly show their loyalty towards you. Because the same guys who were talking crap about me, spreading false rumors and saying all these different negative things, were now like, "Yo, Ian, let's hang out, let's do this, let's do that." So I was able to spot that from a mile away. And then I never grew up with my father. My biological father never really had a connection with me from my youth. But then all of a sudden, the guys showed up and he's like, "Oh, my son, I miss you, all these things." And that also made me think, wow, so now I'm just supposed to jump onto you when my mom has been the one doing all the work, and kind of sustaining me. You don't even know what primary school I went to. You don't even know my career or what I'm doing. But just because you've seen me on the screen now, you want to claim that position as father. So that also made me challenge what blood means. And you also see with family, some individuals would just come just to broadcast themselves like, "Oh, I'm related to this person." And that kind of opened my eyes up a lot about, what it means to be family, and kind of was redefining that definition for me. At the same time, obviously, it was nice. I wouldn't lie. It was enjoyable going to places and people identify you, giving you those two looks like, "Wait, do I know this guy?" And just feeling like, yeah, it's me, yeah, here we are. And that was also quite sweet. But at the same time, there was a lot of fear as well. The industry in Kenya hadn't evolved at the time where like, you know, your earnings were matching your popularity. So you're like known throughout the entire country, but at the same time, you don't have the finances to give you that exclusivity. So, you know, every time it's a risk. So my mom was never even comfortable allowing me to go out by myself. She'd always be driving me around, and thank God she had the finances to take care of that lifestyle for me. But that was also quite a challenge, you know. I'm known everywhere. So it's like everywhere is scary. And I remember one time I was on a matatu. Because matatus for me was normal. I lived in South B. You know, it's a normal thing. You know, just moving back and forth. It's easy. Najipata tao. We're meeting at Archives. I think that was where it was, at Archives. And I was able to maneuver. But then at some point, you enter matatu and everyone's looking at you and you're in like a 14-seater and you don't know who you can trust. You're always feeling your pockets to see if you've got your things. I'm like hugging my bag. I remember even one time this guy was trying to talk to me, and I remember him trying to snatch something from my pocket, and it was just so risky. So that also was another side of, you know, the industry, or being known in the industry, that was a little bit scary. But it also made me learn how to like protect myself and, you know, grow up, as I had mentioned earlier, just becoming this more secure person within myself and having to like kujipanga, you know, organize myself as an individual, because you're realizing not everyone's your friend and not everyone's working for you like that. Yeah, so I think I did Machachari for I think it was around 6 to 7 years. Then amidst that, yeah, some dramas happened, and then I ended up getting actually cut out from the show. And I remember what happened was I'd shared something on social media. It didn't really blow up that much, but I shared something that was calling out racism because I had experienced it to some degree. And then I called it out, and I was a little bit aggressive and maybe quite immature in my expression of it at the time. But I think there was panic from the team that we were working with at the show. And then they didn't even brief me. They just cut me off. And they didn't even like correct me or teach me anything from it. But I'd already still gathered enough fame to be able to do my own thing to some degree. So I managed to get other opportunities, got myself in different other shows, got myself some gigs. So I did that. So yeah, it was around 6, 7, 8 years, I could say, because I still went back and did a few things. But then, yeah, that happened. Then I ended up leaving the show, doing a few things. And then I kind of focused myself on trying to have a different experience. And so I worked to get myself to a different university outside the country rather than staying within the country. I was fortunate. My mom managed to finance my studies at a nice school called Brookhouse. So I studied at Brookhouse School, and I'd also got a Kidogo scholarship there. So it was a little bit easy for mommy, but it was also quite expensive still. And then from there, I managed to get myself to the UK to study. So that was kind of like my fresh start after, you know, the madness of this whole media thing. Because I felt like, at least explain to me, you know? I mean, I feel like in life, to some degree, we should have explanations for our actions. And especially when we make an action, I think the more we're trying to become authentic within ourselves, the more sincere we can express why it is that we do certain things. So yeah, fine. I was coming from a passionate place. In a bid to be politically correct, they cut me off. But I would have appreciated, hey, you know, tell me what I've done wrong, correct me, let me learn, because I was open to learning. And that's something that I think I'd missed from that, and that kind of affected me in my understanding. And so I felt, okay, can I really learn from this country? Because I'm known everywhere, but I can't really learn for myself. It's one of those ones where everything I'm doing is being challenged and criticized. So let me go to a space where I can just be me, and no one really knows me in that sense. And so I can just learn and make mistakes authentically, learn and grow in that way, rather than fingers being pointed at me every 2 seconds. And that's something that I needed. So that's why I kind of also made that shift. So it did really change a lot about my understanding of how expression especially should be, because I was expressing a valid point. I had a racist experience. I had experienced it in multivarious ways, and I'd seen others who were affected by it. My expression of it was probably not the most mature, and I kind of learned, you know, from that experience, maybe with the hard hit that I experienced, how to deal with it better. But at the same time, I felt like I should have been coached. You know, just tell me, anyway, you didn't do it so well here. You could improve it like this, but I never had to get that learning. I had to figure it out for myself. And that's why I made that jump. So yeah, I remember I told my mom I wanted to do drama at first. But my mom was saying, I'm not going to spend all that money for drama. If it's your talent, you do your talent on the side, but try get something a little bit more secure, you know? And so that made me also, you know, be intelligent in my decision making. And I think it was a nice thing that I got to understand following your passion intelligently. So then I decided, let me do marketing, because with marketing, I could learn how not only to promote a business, not only to promote a particular organization, but I can also learn how to promote myself. And so as I'm trying to pursue this career and trying to pursue this acting life, how can I be able to push myself and get myself out there so that I can grasp as many opportunities that I can? So that's what I ended up doing. Yeah, got myself at the University of Kent and studied marketing. Studying in Brooke House, to some degree, kind of got me used to the lifestyle to some extent. I didn't really feel like there was much big of a difference. And actually, considering my mom didn't even come with me. She just had paid for my ticket and told me, Aya, you get there, book a cab, find yourself at Kent, call me once you're there. I know you can figure it out. And my sister had already gone to the UK and studied. So I kind of learned all the basics of what you need to experience. But I guess the culture shock was now I could be myself and not be accountable to the world. Like, let me just do my thing, make my mistakes, explore. So me, I was out here, I was going out, I was partying, I was doing everything, exploring everything, just kind of figuring it out for myself. And that was nice. And also because I went to an international uni and I had so many people my age who were also trying to explore themselves, who kind of got to do that together. And I think that was some of the best times of my life, just kind of learning, how to be independent, how to work, how to live. I was like, let me just take a normal job. So I did at first I remember I worked at a restaurant. I was doing like hospitality at this restaurant. Then I worked at a care home as well. Let me explore that and figure that out and see how that would be, open myself out. I remember my mom was actually so upset. She was like, Yani, Ian, I've paid for you all that money to go to the UK kwanza kuwasha watu. Like, what is this? But I felt like it was just nice having this new experience and just figuring it all out and just trying to redefine what life is for me. And that was super fun. I don't regret it at all. I used to do the nights. And so I'd come with my books. I put everyone to bed because we'd have like a team. It would be like 4 of you guys every night. So I'd put people to bed. And then as we were doing like the call sheets or working out like the schedules and we would have to write like a description of the experience of the residents. And so I would do that quickly and then boom, catch up with my studies. I've got an exam, I've got this. So I had the flexibility to be able to do that. Yeah, it was really nice. A part of me was scared actually because I felt like, I'm building something up and I could compare myself with the other cast members that I was with and seeing how fast they're moving, Their numbers had skyrocketed on Instagram, they were doing so many deals. And it seems like money was flowing intensely for them. And I was like, damn, I could be grasping those opportunities also. I feel like I've got the acumen, I've got the aesthetic, and I bring something different to the table. But then at the same time, I thought, what is more valuable? I could go there and present and perform, but I need to find myself. And so amidst actually what triggered me being like, I'm going to just focus on me, was I'd come back home after a year of study to visit my fam. And then my mom broke down to me the news that she had gone to OC and she got sick. She was diagnosed with cancer and it was at stage 4. So me, I'm here thinking, because that's the first thing you think is she's going to die, she's just prepping me for death. Because at least if you told me it was at stage 1, that's cool. But now you're telling me at stage 4, and as soon as you Google Guru starts telling you, hey, this one, the likelihood is 5 to 6 months. So you're here thinking, what the hell? And so I had this moment of asking, what is life really about? Were we just born to be in this world, acquire, get old, and then die? What's our significance? And so I went back to the UK with this seeking of who am I and what's my purpose in life? What is our goal in life? And amidst that, I connected with a lot of spiritual wisdom based on the teachings of a wonderful book called the Bhagavad Gita, which is actually Bob Collymwood's favorite book. I remember watching an interview, and actually how I knew maybe I should read this book was because I was watching an interview of Bob Collymwood before he had passed, bless his soul, and he was asked, what's your favorite book? And he said, the Bhagavad Gita. I'll let you look it up for yourself. And I was like, that's interesting. So I read this book, and it was just redefining identity and redefining who we are and our purpose in life. And that attracted me so much to thinking that, you know what, I'm not going to just chase material success. Let me find myself, because what is material success when you don't know who you are and you don't know who you are on an internal basis? And then, so it made it easy for me to kind of, you know what, let me pause on this acting stuff. If it's meant for me, it's going to come back. If that's my path for me to be an influencer, for me to share wisdom and entertain others, then I'm sure in one way or another, divinity will guide me towards that. But let me take the inner work and the self-investment, the self-care to figure out who is Ian. It was a lot of pressure because the conventional thing to do, or what people would assume is, hey, mom's not going to be there for so long, so you just go, spend every moment and grasp every moment that you can with her. But when I read this book, and I would actually highly recommend this book. I actually think I'm going to get this book for you. And I read it. It was making me redefine what helping a person is. And so I was kind of put in this position of, is helping my mom giving her money? Is helping my mom having fun with her? Or is helping my mom me making her understand or being secure in the fact that her son's going to be okay regardless of what happens? And so I felt, you know what? Let me go and secure myself so that mom knows that she cannot live in anxiety if that's what's going to happen. Let her at least know that her son is going to be well situated, well protected, and can protect my little brother, because I have a younger brother who's now in his teens, that I can be able to at least have that security to be able to take care of them if anything was to happen to her. Let me work on that, and let me work on being happy, because if she sees me and she sees a happy, self-invested individual who can actually go there and spark positive change, that might give her the peace of mind. And I remember she made a comment and she was like, this was now right before I was leaving. So I'd gotten in contact with the teachings when I was here. And then right before I left, she told me, you know what, Ian, I'm not so worried about you because I know that wherever you go, you can take care of yourself. And that secures me. And so that was like my confidence. You know what, let me go out there and just figure it out properly. And I know I can come back and have something good to show mom. And that's the best thing I can do for her, because I don't want her living in anxiety. Because the last thing, especially in our teachings, we understand is when you're dealing with your death, or like with which is considered our biggest exam, the time that you have to leave this body, a lot of your anxieties are not based on your own experience, but are based on the experience of the people around you. So you're worrying, have I left them secure? Have I left them protected? What's going to happen to them? And so I felt like if I could give my mom that peace of mind, she won't have that anxiety whilst she's departing in this world. And that was the best thing I could do for her. So this book called the Bhagavad Gita, basically, it has 5 main things that it looks at. It's very, very amazing, and it's super deep. We kind of tap into it a little bit. But first of all, it helps us understand our identity. Who are we beyond Adele, the Adele that we've seen in the world? Who are we beyond Ian? We have this external mask that we show, but there's an internal person going through a journey of discovery. Who is that person? And the teachings make us understand that you're a spiritual being having a human experience. And that spiritual being is maneuvering this body like a car. And then this spiritual being has been encapsulated within this material existence. So that's the second thing you learn about the material world. The material world is made up of these different elements. Earth, water, fire, air, and ether are pushing us in different ways to enjoy, because everyone's looking for enjoyment. Everyone's working hard for enjoyment. So this is you as a soul's interaction with this material world. And then at the same time, you're bound by time. So time is restricting you to some degree. You wish you could have more than 24 hours a day to achieve so many other different things, but you're restricted by time. And not just time, you're also restricted by something known as karma. So your actions are breeding certain reactions in your existence. And so those are also acting as an inhibiting factor to how you progress in life. And at the same time, you also learn about how divinity or God, or our understanding and perception of God, is influencing your journey throughout this life, and how you should actually be on a journey of discovering divinity for yourself and having that connection so that you can manipulate this material nature, karma, and time to the best degree so you can actually be happy. So this Bhagavad Gita basically touches on these 5 main topics in a way that then you're armored to live life and be fully happy. And I remember actually it was part of my desire to come back and visit him and actually just talk to him. But I think around the time when I got in contact with the teachings, I hadn't known, because I was away, that he had left his body, that he had died. So when I figured out, because I remember the first time when I was around, I came to where we connected. I did like work experience at Radio Africa. And I was thinking maybe I should try to do something at Safaricom with the marketing department, and maybe I can meet Bob and talk to him about this book, because I've connected with this book and it's normally perceived as an Indian book, that it's only by like Indians or Hindus. but he was really into it. So let me just connect with him and find that perspective. But unfortunately, I got wind that he had died, and I was just like, oh, that's so sad. I wish I could have connected with him. Yeah, and yeah, he's one of those people who I thank, because I looked at him as this figure of success, because he was highly financially successful, very, very eloquent in his expression and in his awareness. And I was like, I want to be kind of like that, you know, and I owe him a lot.
Catch more African stories in the next episode of Legally Clueless.
How powerful was that? And that's just part one. Part two is coming. And in a bit, I'm going to play you a snippet of what you can expect in part two. But I loved when he talked about how best to help his mom. I found that so profound, and so mature and calm and aware in the middle of something as chaotic as a cancer diagnosis. To be able to think like that is just wonderful. You know, how best can I help this person that I love? That's something to think about. And, you know, even listening to his experiences as a child actor and just thinking about fame is not normal. It really is not a normal thing, by the way. And it's not comfortable even for adults. In my experience, my encounters with fame are more often than not extremely uncomfortable, because it's not normal. I've never found it to be a normal thing. So I can only imagine a child trying to navigate this abnormal thing while every bone in them is attracted to normal childhood experiences. Obviously, it's wonderful that a child whose passion is acting gets to do that. But I wonder if there's a way, and this is not only a Kenyan thing, this is across the globe. We see it when we look at like Hollywood childhood actors and the effect working at that young age and fame and all of that has on them long term. I wonder if there's a way to balance it, you know? I wonder if there's a way to balance it for kids. And even just hearing how, oh my goodness, how people change how they behave with you once they believe there's access to something greater. Let me tell you, I'm like, kudos to you learning that at a really young age, because I feel like I learned that not too long ago. I always believe that people will use you for tangible things. So as long as I kept the tangible things safe, there's no way you could use me. But people use you for access. People want to be rounded off to you if they believe that there's fame around you. Even if you don't see it as a huge thing, because most of the time the person who is actually famous doesn't see it as a huge thing, but the people in the periphery are seeing access to certain things. And it might not even be tangible things. It might be concepts or an idea of something, or just the idea of being linked somehow. There's a word I'm looking for, but basically being close. Association, but being close to it. Sometimes people are using you for that. I didn't know this I wish I learned this earlier. When he's talking about his dad coming back and, you know, his childhood bullies now changing their tune, it's really funny because I've had a situation where my dad, I know my mom and dad divorced like when I was in class 6. I wouldn't say I know too many of my relatives from my dad's side. I do know some. I'm not in contact with any, I would say. My dad also passed away in 2007. So, you know, the link is not there. But I do know that every so often I will get, especially on Facebook, I will get like a Facebook message from a cousin. Oh, somebody claiming to be a cousin from my dad's side, either asking for money or things like that. It's hectic because obviously the human part of me is just like, where were you guys when like my mom was going to cancer treatment, or even at her funeral? You know what I mean? And it's just like, now you want to pop up, right? So that's the human bit of me. And now I just know to be more street smart. Keep your goddamn circle super small. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed part 1. I'll play you what you can expect in part 2 in 2 seconds. But if you're in Kenya, remember you can catch this podcast on Trace FM every Monday and Wednesday at 1 p.m. and 11 p.m. and Fridays at 1 p.m. And you can just go to traceradio.co.ke to stream.
If you want to share your story on this podcast, make sure you click the Stories of the form, fill it out, and we will get back to you. Don't forget to grab your tickets to Legally Clueless Live. It's on the 26th of August, 1 p.m. at Baraza Media Lab. We're going to have 3 of our favorite storytellers live on stage, Kadzo, Roslyn, and Washira, giving us the next chapters of their stories. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun, and it'll be dope for you and I to hang out, to meet, to get to know each other. So head over to legallycluelessafrica.com to grab your tickets, or just click the link in the show notes. This is what you can expect next week. Ian will be telling us more about him becoming a monk.
And yeah, after graduating from uni, I was like, you know what? Let me invest myself into it more. So I became a monk and moved into the monastery for 3 years and just fully embraced the practice and just absorbed myself to learn it so that I can know what I'm talking about, not just being whimsical. Because in this age we're in, everyone just Googles something for 2 seconds and then they act like they're the professor. I remember when I called my brother and I told my younger brother, because at that time he was like 9, 10, and I told him I became a monk. He was like, oh, so you're doing kung fu and karate? Because I think that's like the perception of what it means to be a monk. But the main thing that we were learning in this space is how to control the mind. I could say being in the monastery made me get in contact with what I define as real men. Men who are in touch with their emotions, who are in touch with their feelings, who are honest, and who are self-aware.
That's it for this episode of Legally Clueless. You can share this podcast with your friends. You can keep it for yourself. I'm not judging. Just make sure you're here next week for the next episode.